Greetings to Mr. Patrick. Today, our group will present on the issue of fraud investigation. My name is Norma Sarah binti Jamali and I will start with the presentation. Fraud is defined as an act or course of deception, unintentional concealment, omission, or perversion of truth to gain unlawful or unlawful advantage, induce another to part with some valuable item or surrender a legal right and or inflict injury in some manner. Based on the study conducted by Tim Harvey in 2008, there are 6 behavioral red flags of fraud, which are: the first one, living alone above one mean; second, financial issue; third, unusual closeness to a vendor or customer; 4, excessive control problem or a refusal to share responsibilities; 5, family issues such as divorce; and 6, a generalized wheeler-dealer attitude. There are 3 main types of fraud, which are asset misappropriation, for example, fake payroll scheme, fake billing, and false invoice. The second one is bribery and corruption, for example, kickbacks and conflict of interest. The third fraud is financial statement deception, such as increased annual bonus and stock price manipulation. Now, I will proceed with the motive behind fraud investigation. The first motive is pressure. Pressure is a need that an individual tries to satisfy by committing fraud. Pressure may be from a personal issue or financial issue. Employee may feel pressured to commit fraud if they are not able to accomplish their financial goal. Pressure also may emerge when an individual wants to earn more money in order to pay personal or medical expenditure. The fraudster believe that the problem they are encounter is unshareable. They also believe that their problem need to be resolved in secret. The second motive is opportunity. Opportunity is the ability to commit fraud and remain undetected. Fraudster must believe that their action will not be detected since they do not want to get caught in act. Example of situation where fraud is possible is weak internal control, poor management, and inadequate accounting policies. The third motive is rationalization. Rationalization is the ability for a person to justify a fraud. Example of rationalization used by fraudster are: the first one is the individual belief that that committing fraud is permissible if they want to save their family member or their loved one. The second one is when the individual believe that no outside help is available. The third one is when the individual is not satisfied with their job. And then the fourth one is when the individual believe that they will lose everything, including their home, car, and family. That is all from me. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter, Nofazila. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma Sarah. I am Nofazila binti Abdurrahman. Now I will proceed with our findings on the relation between fraud investigation and internal audit function. First of all, turn at the top structure. Internal audit should understand management and the board of directors' attitude on bribery and corruption risk. Next is on bribery and corruption risk assessment. Internal audit done this by thoroughly understanding all elements of the anti-bribery and corruption program before conducting risk assessment. Thirdly is on policies and procedure. Internal audit tests the policies and procedure implied by the organization by looking whether they are documented properly, receive approval from the management in accordance with all applicable law and regulation, and effectively implemented. Next, communication and training. Internal audit function shares information with other function or parties as needed. Lastly, auditing and monitoring. Internal audit function ensure the effectiveness of risk assessment, analysis, and communication in supporting management monitoring role. Next, I will move to the next part, which is on internal auditors' action to solve fraud. Fraud can be discovered by conducting audit function, where internal auditor should consider fraud risk while assessing internal control design and determining audit steps to perform. Internal auditors should have sufficient knowledge about fraud to spot red flag signaling possible fraud, as mentioned by Norma Sarah before. Next, internal auditor must be alert for potential for fraud, such as control deficiency, and perform additional tests to confirming the fraud existed. Internal auditor should evaluate whether management is actively maintaining oversight of the fraud risk management program, whether prompt corrective action has been taken in response to any identified control deficiency or weaknesses, and whether the program's monitoring strategy is still sufficient for the program's ongoing success. Lastly, internal auditor should evaluate the sign of fraud and assess whether any additional action is required or whether a recommendation for an investigation is needed. If investigation was necessary, internal auditor should recommend the board of directors to do so. That is all from me. Now I will pass the presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Nofazila. My name is Noshafira Natasha binti Jafri, and I will continue on the internal auditor's action to solve fraud, which is by exercising skepticism. Professional skepticism is a mindset that includes asking questions and evaluating audit evidence thoroughly. Internal auditors who act skeptically and focus on the efficiency of internal controls will recognize the typical characteristics of fraud and can uncover probable fraudulent conduct if and when it exists. Lastly, communicate with the board. The Chief Audit Executive (CAE) may include the following in discussions with the board. First, all fraud audits completed. Second, the risk assessment process for fraud. Third, fraud or conflicts of interest, as well as the outcomes of compliance monitoring programs, including the law and code of ethics. Fourth, the organizational structure of the internal audit activities in terms of addressing fraud. Fifth, collaboration with the external auditors to coordinate fraud audit operations. Sixth, an overall evaluation of the organization's control environment. 7. Internal audits fraud activity, productivity, and budgetary measures. 8. Comparing internal audits fraud operations to those of other organizations. And lastly, internal audits role in fraud investigations. However, CAE may disagree with senior management and the board regarding the appropriate timing to notify them of significant concerns, such as fraud. To overcome this, CAE should consult with senior management and the board before the concerns arise. Next, I will proceed with the roles of internal auditor in fraud investigation. In an organization, internal audit activity does not have responsibility for the fraud investigation function, but may still be requested to assist in gathering information and making suggestions for internal control enhancement. However, their involvement in investigation must be stated in the internal audit charter as well as in fraud policies and procedures. Internal auditing also can decline to participate because it is responsible for reviewing the effectiveness of investigation. If the internal audit activity is responsible for the fraud investigation, it may conduct an investigation using in-house staff, outsourcing, or both. Internal auditing may also use non-audit employees in the organization to assist or hire external experts. That is all from me. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Noor Shafira. My name is Nurizan Binti Matarif, and I will proceed with related case. First related case from 1MDB. The 1MDB scandal exposed corruptions, bribery, and money laundering operations. This scandal became the most famous financial scandal as it is involved the former Malaysian Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib Tun Razak. Datuk Sri Najib Tun Razak was accused for directing more than RM 2.67 billion from 1MDB into his personal bank account. So the police seized more than 500 handbags and 12,000 pieces of jewelry from property connected to him, and he prohibited from leaving the country. Later, Datuk Sri Najib was charged with criminal breach of trust, money laundering, and abuse of power. He was subsequently convicted of 7 offences related to SRC International, a 1MDB company, and given 12 prison terms. Lo Tekjo, also known as Cholo, the mastermind of this scandal, played a crucial role in the transfer of 1MDB funds to foreign countries via shell companies and offshore banks account. He used 1MDB funds to support his luxurious lifestyles. Therefore, he was charged with money laundering. Other than the former Malaysian Prime Minister and Cholo, the American rapper, Press, and Tim Lesnar, a former of chairman of Goldman Sachs, and Elliot Brody, the fundraiser, were among those accused in the US of participating in the 1MDB scandal. Next related case on fraud is Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investing scam that was inspired by Charles Ponzi, the most famous con artist. This fraudulent activity began when Ponzi realized that he could make money by purchasing IRCs in one country and exchanging them for more costly stamps in different countries. He sent the money into the agent that he hired to acquire and sell the stamps. After trading the IRC for more expensive stamps, and he made more than 400% profit from some of these sales. After that, he began looking for an investor to generate more profit and made ridiculous returns to the investor. However, Joseph Allen, the bank commissioner, discovered numerous Ponzi-controlled accounts had gotten loans from Hanover Trust, totaling more than 250,000 US dollar. Allen then seized the Hanover Trust because of many infractions and unintentionally blocked Ponzi's plan to borrow money from bank. Ponzi then surrendered and was detained on August 12, 1920 and charged with 86 charges of mail fraud and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. As for conclusions, we agree that the threat of fraud is one of the most significant governance concerns that organizations confront regardless of size, sector, or locations. It is critical to combat fraud by implementing adequate internal control process that include an appropriate direction strategy. A combined assurance approach is critical for understanding the inadequacies in control that allow for the manifestations of fraud, and internal audit should assist the organizations by providing appropriate assurance service of internal controls meant to detect and prevent fraud. So that is all from us. Thank you.